Good evening and welcome to Thorold City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I also would like to call for the adoption of the agendas. Councillor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Payon, that the council adopt the agenda as published August the 2nd, 2018, and that any and all revisions published August the 3rd, 2018.
Thank you, Councillor. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I'll go right into my mayor's report. For interested residents, the environmental assessment study of Regional Road 71, St. David's Road, from Highway 406 to Regional Road 55, Collier Road and Burley Hill Drive, is available for review through the Clerk's Department. At a cost of $4.4 million, this project will be completely funded by the Niagara region. On Friday, July 27th, I had the opportunity to participate in the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Civic Park International Plaza at Niagara Regional Headquarters. The property surrounding the building will be transformed into a stunning and inviting space for residents, staff, and visitors to the Niagara region. We look forward to the completion of this exciting project. Since this is the only council meeting we will have this month, I want to remind everyone to take the time to enjoy the last month of this beautiful summer we've been experiencing. Labor Day will be here before we know it. And one more last announcement. I'd like to welcome Jason Simpson to the city of Thorold, our new chief building official. Jason, you're welcome. And that concludes my remarks. There are no regional council updates. So I'll move to the adoption of the minutes. Council and General Committee minutes of July 17, 2018. Councillor Payon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sharon, that the Council and General Committee meeting minutes of July 17th, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Items for discussion in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. General Committee meeting minutes of July 17, 2018. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Neal, that the General Committee meeting minutes of July 17, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Again, are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. General Committee meeting minutes of July 20th, 2018. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Longo, that the General Committee meetings of July 20th, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Planning and Development Services Public Forum Committee meeting minutes of July 3rd, 2018. Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Whalen, that the Planning and Development Services Public Forum Committee meeting minutes of July 3rd, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any conflicts of interest, councillors? Seeing none, I'll move on. There are no public meetings. Nothing under civic recognition, but we have a wonderful presentation tonight, spearheaded by Councillor Hanley. And we will be presenting certificates to contributors of the recent McAdam Park improvements. And I sincerely thank all the volunteers that had their hands in this project. And I think we're going to... We're going to have a presentation for you. Go ahead, Counselor.
You have a mic, or just do it right here? Do it?
Uh,
I don't think I need one there.
I don't think you need
I can just say,
There you go.
it wasn't only me, it wasn't only myself, obviously, in that, I did spearhead it. Peter Mahichuk, every time he seen me for I don't know how many years, was always wanting those washrooms in Thorold South, and it got to the point where every time I seen him, I had to go to the washroom. So, and it started from there, basically. That was always a joke between us. But it started with Vince Perry Excavating. I don't know if anybody here is from Vince Perry, but I did call him. I know there's not that many people here that it actually all involved, but it started with Vince Perry Excavating. If anybody's here from, I know Councillor Mike Murphy, will get him up here. Councillor Mike Murphy done all the plumbing. I got all the plumbing material from place from Toronto, Modern Niagara. We were doing a job together building a hospital in Milton, and I confronted the vice president, and he gave me everything I needed. And Mike installed it all. So Mike, would you come up, please? Oh, yeah.
Former.
Yeah, former city councilor too, Mike. We've been friends a long time, and he helped me out a long time ago too in projects, so as we do it, we'll get everybody up here one at a time, and then I'll present the certificates at once. But I also know that my stepson's here, Eric, wait till if Eric will come up. Eric come and help me on the weekend a couple times. That's what it took. There's like 22, 23 names here of individuals. That was, I needed someone to come for a weekend. It took us 2 summers to do it. A little longer we expected, but it was a weekend job, working full time. And we would go there on weekends and do the plumbing or lay some blocks, and Peter would do it during the day. So next up would be Canadian Corps. President here is Mike Reed. The Corps gave us all the money that we needed to buy the plywood for the roof. So I tried to hit all the individuals up as it went on and what we needed to supply it. Also, Glenn Gordon, if he could come up, please. Glenn Gordon from Rolling Meadows Land Corporation. He gave me all the trusses that I needed. I went to him and asked him, and he gave me the money that I needed to do the trusses, so another good one there for him. Ken Salvage, Dan's here. If I could, Dan, to come up, please. Dan gave me a cash donation and that stuff, so we were able to do it. And one of the biggest contributors is here is Mr. Ron Hargo and that stuff. He gave me a check for $2,500. So I want to know. See, it chokes me up. It chokes me up to see how many people came together to do this. 22 altogether. I'll mention them all. And then also the person who laid all the blocks, Peter Mahichuk and his brother Billy, that are here. Yeah. So collectively together between all these individuals, Peter laid all the blocks, and collectively these are the guys that made it happen here. And I can tell you that Touchstone Landscaping, they gave me the stone I needed to use to fill in all the backfill and everything. MDF Recycling lumped me a machine and skid steer so I could do all the backfill and everything. Hamlet Roofing done the roofing. Dave Mahichuk also helped me out on the project. As you see, Niagara bought me the blocks for 50% off. John Doherty, another guy. Lafarge Canada gave me all the concrete for free. The city graciously on a Friday afternoon, thanks to guys like Steve Santos, allowed me to have 3 employees to do the concrete floors. We done that on a Friday afternoon. Oh my God. MDF, yeah. Jamie Jansen Plumbing, he gave us service in kind and just design thing, and Bill and Bobby Duff for the roofing. Rob Bentonetto Roofing and Siding, they supplied all the siding, the eave drop, the downslopes, and Tom Chorney, also from Thorold South, he done the painting. So that's how we all got it done. So, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Hamilton, okay, sorry, Sean Terrell, I didn't even see the voice down there, sorry. Huh?
Sean's not here.
Sean's not here?
No.
Okay, so Jim's here, so Jimmy will come up here, please. Sorry, Jim, I didn't even see you there. And Bobby and that stuff, sorry. And I didn't even see you guys there. Actually, see, I called your boss and he said you would make sure. So these are the guys that done the roofing for me. I ran into him one day and said what we were doing and that stuff. He said, I work for Hamlet Roofing. Went that day, went to the yard or whatever, got the shingles, came back, done the roof. That's how fast it basically happened. So congratulations to all of you and thanks very much too, guys. I didn't even see you. So. Thanks very much. And then Mayor Ted will make a presentation and we'll get a photo together. Yeah, and I gotta thank my fellow councilors too. They were the ones, I have to get permission from council first, and then the city let me do waivers and that stuff. And I know we got some photos of them on the roof and that stuff, and not hard, but a lot of them still photography was for the photos and that stuff when we had done it.
That's me.
That's you.
Thanks, Teddy.
Yes, I do.
And regulation's 10 feet anyway, so we weren't that high. Some companies are 6 feet. And then lastly, I gotta thank Curtis Drake too, what we're doing. I gotta thank Steve Santos, and the building department, and Tony Aiello, actually his wife, she gave me the drawings. I came with a drawing on a piece of graph paper, and Tony actually went home, gave it to his wife, and his wife done an architectural drawing for me, so I could submit it to the city for plans. And Steve Santos, I can say, how many years ago? 20 years ago, we built dugouts on Sullivan Park. 20 years ago, same thing. And Steve laid the blocks then. I didn't have my high-tech brothers. But it's all great, eh? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you get it. Yeah. Bobby. I know I've taken up a little bit of time at council, but seeing that it's summertime, you know, we had a little spare time. Yeah, we're gonna get a little condensed shot here, please.
Help out there.
We'll get it. Right there, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Hamlet's roof. That's the roof, right?
No, Bob.
Yes. I know quite a few, you know, that's what it took though, that stuff, 25 different individuals and companies actually came together, so. And 2 years, Jason. Yeah. Yeah. Probably the last one. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. That's it, ready? Now you drop it. Yeah. I put it in for him. Bobby. Hey, save the best shot. Then yeah, if we totally want to do a group picture thing, you, me, Ted.
Gonna have to do this in two
Yeah.
rows, I think.
Or we all get together, want to try to squeeze it together?
Yeah, you can try. That's
2
pretty
rolls?
big way.
Put the short people in the
Put the
front.
short people in the front? I know. Aye. Even bend down a little if we have to. Huh? Oh, yeah.
We're okay.
Just to make sure.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dan, I appreciate it very much. Mr. Hart, I appreciate it very much. Hey, I appreciate it, buddy. Hey, I appreciate it. Believe me.
Tim.
Bobby, thanks a lot, hey.
Okay, where are we? Okay. We're into motions for support. The first one's mine. Councillor Whalen, will you take the floor, please? Take the gavel, I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have you present the motion, please?
Thank you. And my motion is moved by myself, and I didn't get anybody to sign it. You don't-
Can I ask for a seconder for the motion? Councillor Pion?
Councillor Pion. That the resolutions received at the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative 2018 conference pertaining to building resilient Great Lakes and St. Lawrence cities and towns and taking action to halt Asian carp and other aquatic invasive species, and a collaborative approach to address nutrient pollution, and the North Harbor mercury contamination in Thunder Bay, and the Niagara River Ramsar nomination, and supporting the Edmonton Declaration be received.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put it out to the floor. Any discussion or comments?
I'll just comment myself then
Sounds
real
good.
quick.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
As you recall last year, I brought each one individually, and it took up a good portion of council's time. So this year, we shrunk the wording down to the least that we can get it, and so I'm just going to comment on the conference it was in Ajax this year. And first I'll comment on Ajax, what a marvelous little city it is. Well, actually, it's a town of 120. They still call themselves a town. But the beauty of Ajax is someone many years ago in their brilliant mind took their waterfront, 7 kilometers long, 1 kilometer deep, and preserved it for parkland. And it's just a very, very beautiful park. And that's why the setting, I think, was specifically in Ajax. But the conference was really good. I certainly learned a lot. I'm becoming more and more of an environmentalist, if anything. There was a lot of good topics that we talked about. Like I said, the Asian carp is knocking on the door to the Great Lakes, and we have to stop it. If it gets into the Great Lakes, it'll just devour all our existing species, especially the eggs, and there will be no other fish in there but Asian carp. With regards to nutrient pollution, that's the blooms out on Lake Erie is being affected very, very badly, and that's caused by industry and what the farmers are putting on their fields right now. So there's going to be tremendous work with the farming community, with the industry, ahead of everything else. There is another thing, that guy down there that runs the U.S., they have a $310 million budget, and again, they want to cut $300 million off of it. I believe Canada puts in about 80 million, so it's quite proportional. So that's another struggle this group is having, and I should tell you, I go right back to the beginning. The Great Lakes Initiative is a group of 135 mayors surrounding the Great Lakes, 60 million people in that perimeter, and their goal is to work towards the cleaning of the Great Lakes. So that's probably the reason that I was so much for Thorold being a member. And that's about all I can say, and if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any questions for the mayor? Therefore, being none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? So passed unanimously.
Thank you. We have from the town of Pelham, Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Hanley that the correspondence received from the town of Pelham from its council meeting of July 16, 2018, requesting the Government of Canada and its regulating bodies, including Health Canada, the Federal Office of Medical Cannabis, and the Federal Office of the Cannabis Directorate, be requested to take the necessary action to ensure cannabis grow facilities comply with Section 61 of the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulation, ACMPR, in regard to the elimination of the odor released from these facilities to be received and supported.
Speakers to the resolution? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Statements by councilors. We will have one by Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that everybody in this room has had complaints around the city about the rodent population that we've been encountering over the last little while. What I'd like to do is put a motion on the floor, second by Councilor Hanley, that we do the same thing as St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, at least temporarily till the next council gets in, let's say with a $5,000 budget, just to do a rodent check with the exterminator, up to $200 reimbursement, the same as these other two municipalities. And I believe there's more in Niagara also.
So you're asking for a limit of 5,000?
No, limit of 200, 500 budget, yes, Mr. Mayor, yes.
$5,000 you want to put towards this, and each individual can get up to $200?
That's correct.
Okay.
50% extermination fees up to $200, yeah.
Okay, good. That's a motion on the floor. Okay. You can do a notice of motion for next council. We can waive the rules, and someone's got to put a motion on the floor to waive the rules that we vote on it tonight.
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Uglini?
I'll put a motion that we waive the rules so we can vote on it.
You seconder, right? We
That's
need a
great, sooner the
seconder.
better. Thank you.
Seconder. Councilor Neal? All those in favor? Okay, that motion can go, your motion could go on the floor now.
Sounds good, thank you.
Speakers to the motion. See, Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just get some clarification? Did you say it's for 50% of a bill?
Up to $200.
Up to $200. So we're not paying the entire bill that somebody would submit?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And a total of $5,000 from the city. To be funded from a general budget overrun. Okay. Councilor Pion.
Yeah, just also for clarification, can a person submit repeatedly a bill? Let's say they have a recurring problem. Can they do it more than once? Or
No, it's just one, I believe.
a one-time thing?
One time.
Yeah, I believe some of the exterminators, at least one my daughter had in St. Catharines, they gave her a year guarantee on it, so they would come back under the same cost that originally set up. Yeah. But it would be a one-time occurrence, yes.
Okay. Everybody's clear on the motion? Councilor Neal.
Just how are we going to promote this?
City website.
How are we going to?
Just on the city website? Or are we going to go further afield? I mean, a lot of people will not know that we've got this unless we promote it.
They're huddling. Look.
So administration of this program is going to be lengthy, so we'll have to come together as a senior staff. And
Clerks informed me that the administration of this would be quite a sizable endeavor, and what they want to do is come back with a report from staff, basically outlining what the procedures will have to be done. So
That'd be fine, Mr. Mayor. Can we have that first part of September, the first meeting? It'd be great to, sooner before the better.
no problem.
Thank you.
Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not a little bit relating to this, but when we talked about this, when it come up earlier, when I brought it up earlier, it was about education. If you watch what's going on in the community, a lot of people put garbage out in bags, and they put it out the night before. You come in the morning, it's been torn open by rodents. So I think part of our thing needs to be about education, about clean yards bylaw, sealed containers for garbage. I mean, you can go to a lot of municipalities, like when I go down to Florida, they don't allow garbage to go out unless it's in a sealed container. That's something at a regional level we need to move towards, because half the problem we have is plastic bags end up put out at night, and then they're all over the boulevard in the morning. So I think part of the, not part of this motion, but part of our other motion from before is for education. So we need to keep pursuing the education portion.
Okay, any other speakers? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I have one other statement by councilors, and that's Councilor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've handed out today the new brochures, the tourism brochures that Heritage Thorold has sponsored that will be available throughout the community. It's a update for the heritage buildings that are throughout the community, not just the buildings, but the objects and sites themselves, so that we now see an updated version that we can give to the people who come to visit our community. And if you follow the map that's in the brochure, you can walk through and see every one of the documents that are there. Plus, of course, the City of Thorold wins the Prince of Wales Award for Municipal Heritage in 2017. That's focused on the back of the document itself, and on the front we have the picture of Beaver Dams Church, which is, as Heritage Thorold would say, is a iconic building in Thorold. So the things that are in here that are worth looking at, first of all, it's an updated version. Second, that our designer for Heritage Thorold, supported by Pam Mims, is the person who's put this together. Funding for the project came out of the 2017 budget of Heritage Thorold. Beaver Dam Church is on it. The brochure is supported by the three-pronged tourism approach. Three things we try to let people know about when they come into Thorold. There's heritage tourism, there's cycling tourism, and music tourism. And without anybody who lives in this community knows about those three things. You can ride your bike here, you can go to the Blues Festival, and that's expanding and expanding on a regular basis. And of course, Heritage Thorold is constantly adding new buildings to their revenue of buildings that are designated as being important heritage monuments within the community itself. The brochures will be available through Venture Niagara, distributed through the Lock 7 Visiting Center, and the map and the photographs that are here update anyone who wants to come and visit our community, as I said earlier, and make sure that they can see all the great things that we have to offer. I think tourism becomes a really important aspect, and the tourism committee that Councilor Ugolini is the chair of works very hard to bring people into our community, to let them know what we're all about. And of course, when they come and shop, our store owners begin to benefit from that. And when they come and they have a meal and they do several things, you begin to see an increase in the number of restaurants and other things that are available in our community. So as this whole thing works its way through, things like the car show, for example, a couple of weeks ago, made an enormous impact on the people in downtown Thorold, on Front Street in particular. I had some numbers that came out of the people who had shops downtown, and it astounded me. I'm almost afraid to say the number because it's so far out there, I can't believe it's really true. So I'm not going to say it in case I didn't hear well. And my brain hasn't worked very well over the last little while anyway, so I want to make sure that I have the facts here. The reality is that this is available for anyone, and it's worth you as a citizen in this city to get hold of it and find out what the city's all about. If you don't know what downtown core offers you, you need to get this booklet and go and look at it. You'll love what you see. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Sharon, for bringing that forward. Councilor Ugolini would like to comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to expand on what Councilor Sharon said. The Tourism Committee's been working closely with Heritage Thorold, or LACAC, and we've started an initiative. We had a brainstorming session, and then we're working with now a group out of hospitality and tourism at Niagara College to work together with us to take heritage tourism to a new level. So that's something we hope to grow on, and this brochure is outstanding. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Go ahead.
I just want to thank everybody who has been very supportive for me over the last little while. As you know, I've had some difficulties as far as my own personal health is concerned. It's coming back the right way. I'm looking forward to a great new year all the way through, and my retirement as a counselor. Just thank the people who have sent kind words to me and given their support all the way through. It made a big difference for me personally and my family as well. Thank
Councillor
you.
Sharon, we're delighted to see you back in that chair, and you're looking really good, and that's the important thing. I'd like to make a comment also on this. I just had a glimpse at it, and just by highlighting the church, and when I see that Prince of Wales award, it's something I'm quite proud of personally. I am greatly proud of, and it's something that the city should be very proud of. And I think we have some plans to keep the momentum going on that. I think we.
To mention that it's going to be installed on the viewing center in the next little while. I think in the next couple of weeks it should be there with an explanation plaque going along with it. So not only do we have the award, we're going to put it up and let people look at it.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Statement. We'll move on. We're into notice of motions. Are there any notice of motions? Seeing none, we'll resolve into general committee. Do you want to have a 5-minute break or keep going? Keep going? Okay. I'll call this meeting to order, and I'll ask, are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we have one delegation, and that's Jean D'Amelio Swire and Sergio Sartor, residents, and they want to talk about Public Works and Community Services Report, PWCS 2018-28. Welcome. It's on.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and City Council, thank you for allowing Sergio and I to address you this evening on Report PWCS 2018-28 to request council's support to remove Honey Locust Circle from the restricted parking pilot program in the Confederation West community. We are not here to represent any other street listed on the report. We would like to acknowledge the residents here present tonight to support the request for the removal from the pilot. We would also like to thank Councilors Uccolini and Neal for attending the public information session on June 26th. We are asking for a recorded vote or votes on the report or amendments to the report. We would like to stress that the vast majority of residents would like Honey Locust removed from the pilot and have supported these efforts by signing a petition with 29 names, attending a public meeting, there were 18, attending a council meeting, attending a neighborhood meeting, submitted written comments, and/or are now, some residents are now attending this meeting. We would like to recap some of the extenuating circumstances as to why Honey Locust should be removed from the pilot, and now I turn it over to Sergio.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to address you again on this parking issue. The belief is that there's a belief that there's a safety or parking issue on our street, and I'd like to try and convince you that it's not necessary. I believe this doesn't apply to Honey Locust Circle. I've actually gone down and measured the fire trucks, and I've taken pictures and measurements with 2 cars parked on either side of the road, and there is ample room for the fire truck to drive through and also open both doors with both cars parked on either side. So the Honey Locust Circle can accommodate the largest fire truck at the Thorold City Hall. The first notice that was received after the parking sign started going up indicated that the pilot pertained to all streets less than 7.9 meters. When I pointed out that our street was 8.7 meters at the narrowest point and 14.8 meters at its widest, this criteria was then dropped, and a second notice was given out with new brackets. The second notice stated that the pilot intent was to modify traffic flow, of which we do not have significant traffic flow on Honey Locust. And when questioned where the traffic flow was going to be measured on the street with no traffic flow, the criteria changed again. There's no mention of traffic flow at all in the final report. At the public meeting that was held after the sign started going up, we were told that the pilot was due to safety concerns after a fire truck issue driving down Fox Grape Road. And, and also to deal with high-density housing issues in that area, of which Honey Locust Circle is not high density. At the information meeting, this introduced some new and never seen before policy brackets for parking restrictions based on road widths. We asked for an explanation in the meeting and also by email as to the legislative authority or supporting documentation on the new parking restrictions. We actually received a reply today that that confirms that this is a discretionary set of brackets and there's no legislative authority or backup information to those brackets. After measuring a sample of streets in Thorold, we found that a number of the streets would be impacted by these new brackets if only road width was the criteria. In fact, engineering confirmed that 40% of the streets in Thorold would be in the 7.3 meter bracket, and therefore applying these brackets would mean no parking on either side of the street. If there is an issue on Fox Grape Road, then I would suggest dealing with that issue, not blanketing Honey Locust Circle. My understanding is that this matter came about due to concerns on some streets with high-density housing, with lack of adequate parking, which are either through or connecting streets. Again, this is not applicable to Honey Locust Circle. We are a self-contained street with two separate entrances and not a connecting street, only single-family dwellings, and generally, you're only on Honey Locust Circle if you're going there. This is traveled by residents, family, friends, and service vehicles. Honey Locust Circle has 19 houses on the west side and 7 houses on the east side. And on the east side, only 5 of the 7 houses have parking frontage. Putting up no parking signs on the west side, as proposed, would create a parking issue for the residents, as the 19 west side residents would now have to park on the 5 available spaces left. In summary, Honey Locust is not a street with a safety or parking concern. It is not an access street. Parking restrictions would impose parking hardship on residents where there currently are none. An overwhelming majority of the residents do not want parking restrictions and want Honey Locust to be removed from the pilot. It is not a street with high-density student housing. It is wider than most tertiary streets in a subdivision, and the street is 8.7 meters to 14.8 meters wide. A fire truck with the doors open could drive and park between 2 parked cars if necessary on Honey Locust Circle. including Honey Locust Circle in the pilot, would prove nothing and have no bearing on the results of a pilot. Thank you, Mayor and City Councilors, for allowing me to address you. I'm hoping Council will amend the report, PWCS 2018-28, to remove Honey Locust Circle from the pilot.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions for our presenters? Questions only. I'll call the report up immediately, and you can speak to it then. Otherwise, questions only. No questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. And can I get a motion to move PWCS 218-28 and move it forward to, for debate immediately? Councillor Whalen. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I'll call a report, PWCS 2018-28, and I'll ask Councillor, or Sean, Mr. Dunsmore to please read the report and the recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that council approve the parking pilot restriction program on the roadways outlined in Table 2 of the administrative report, and that the Traffic and Parking Bylaw 150-2012, Sections 3.12 be amended to accommodate the affected streets in Table 2 of the administrative report, and that council directs staff to monitor the effectiveness of this program for implementation across the city. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore. Can I have any speakers to the report? Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think we've all been out to visit the Honey Locust, which is part of this report. And I don't see a problem with it myself. I think it's wide enough to accommodate for safety factors, our fire trucks going down that street if it was ever necessary, and hopefully it will never be necessary. So what I would like to do is amend or add a recommendation that we exempt Honey Locust from the pilot project.
Okay, we'll call that an amendment. So we'll speak to the amendment. Are there any speakers to the amendment of removing Honey Locust from table number 2? Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do live on Honey Locust, but I do not believe I have a conflict here. If I do, somebody please tell me. I agree with Councillor Neal, but I am not only going to support that we remove Honey Locust, I believe we need to remove a number of other streets. And I'll tell you my reasoning behind that. When this issue first came forward, I brought it forward. I remember bringing it forward, and it was because of concerns on Juneberry, Foxgrape, White Ash, and Shellbark. And the reason was because they're high-density streets and because there's not enough parking. So what happens is the streets get jammed with cars and our service vehicles can't get down and creates a problem. My neighbor here, Sergio, did a very good job here. We do not have a parking problem on Honey Locust. Not at all. And there's not a parking problem on Sugar Maple or Tulip Tree. At this point, there's not a parking problem. But I believe what we've created is a parking issue here by having this report come forward. This is not what council asked for. I brought the motion forward, Councillor Ugolini seconded it, the rest of council agreed to it. We need to limit parking on high-density streets, and we specifically name those. We need to start with those ones, and we need to move forward with any new street in Thorold with the same set of criteria. Basically any new street, because it's going to be high density. So I hope this isn't a conflict, because I don't want it to be just about Honey Locust, because this isn't about Honey Locust. It's about the other streets that I mentioned in Confederation, West Confederation. I believe they should all be removed from the pilot project, and I think we should have a pilot project based on what council asked for over a year ago.
Thank you. Councilor Ugolini,
I was going to say the same thing.
on the amendment.
On the amendment that Councillor Longo's, I was going to say the same thing that Councillor Longo said because he brought the motion forward. I seconded it. The pilot project should have been restricted to what we asked for and should never have been expanded to what we didn't ask for. And then, moving forward, let's address issues in our new developments. And also, if there is an issue and it becomes an issue that a fire truck can't get down a certain street or that, let's address that as a safety issue, and definitely I'm all for that. But the original pilot project that came forward to council, that council voted on, was on the streets that Councillor Longo mentioned, and I think that pilot project should be restricted to those streets because that's what we asked for. So I agree with Councillor Longo.
Councilor Pion to the amendment.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the previous two councilors as well. Also, given the fact that this is a pilot project, it makes sense to include those streets that do currently have a problem, because if you include streets that don't have a problem in a pilot project, then the data you collect in monitoring is not going to be as meaningful. What we want to find out is if we monitor the problem areas, does this change work? And if you include areas that don't have a problem, that interferes with that question. So I think we should stick only with the problems, the streets that have the problem with high density and the ones that we identified.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with their fellow councilors just spoke. It's nice to have this delegation here tonight because they spoke up before it was done. Lots of times we get it in place and you have to backtrack on it. And it's hard to believe that we got a delegation of size here tonight, but we only had 6 comments of all those residents in that area that they're in favor of the restrictions. So how much more of a hassle we can have if we put this into place? So I kind of agree too, we should do the major concerns as opposed to the whole area. Thank you.
Any other speakers? I have one question. I've been reading this thing. How long is this pilot supposed to last?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our intent was to do it for a full year.
Full year? Okay, thank you. Okay, after all is said and done, I'll call a question on, okay, so.
The current motion is to remove Honey Locust, but we haven't specifically worded the motion to remove any other streets.
Okay.
So I think that needs to be changed.
Go ahead, Councilor Longo.
Just for clarity, I will name the streets that I think should be part of the pilot project. How's that? I think it should be Fox Grape Road, White Ash Road, Juneberry Road, Shellbark Lane, and Elderberry Road.
So that's it.
Councilor Neal.
Mr. Mayor, I don't agree. I think if you're going to have a pilot project, and I don't know where your expertise comes from, but we're not experts at bringing these streets or taking them out without a report back from staff who will go out and look at all the streets and will come back with a report that says the streets that you're talking about are what you feel they don't need to be in the or have sides of their streets either put forward as far as parking is concerned or not. I think that's the gist of a pilot project, is to look at the whole situation in that neighborhood. And if those streets are okay to have fire trucks going down them, then the report should or would say it. So in that respect, I don't agree with just picking and choosing the streets that you feel that are okay. I think it needs to come back after having a year-long look at those streets, and they can either be put in or put out at that particular point in time.
I have Counselor Hanley, then Counselor Sharon.
To weigh on it, I believe that we should go back to what the original motion was, in the 4 streets. That's what council asked for, and that's what I believe I would support, even though it was for just honey locust. But if we do this for honey locust, and then what happens to another group of residents come forward, do we amend it again and amend it again? Let's start with what we originally asked for. That's what I would vote for tonight as council.
Okay, Counselor Sharon?
I look at this really carefully. I'm not being a guy who can drive right now. The idea of driving down these streets has not been possible for me. So we're looking at high-density streets where there's high-density housing, and there are the other streets around here would not normally be part of this project itself.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Longo suggested, this originally started from what I would know as Phase 4 of the Confederation, which is the fox grape, the white ash, the juneberry, the shellbark. And those properties certainly have higher than normal densities. They have a lot of rental units in there, multiple rental units inside the buildings. And the original complaint was about one of the properties where they have 5 or 6 people living in there, and they're parking along the edge of the road all the time.
Okay. Thank you very much. In my mind, when I look at the whole process here, I think it was the intent of the original motion to simply look at the high-density areas where there was a serious parking problem, and to find a way in which that can be solved so that the parking issue is not becoming a safety issue. The reality here is that if staff came back with a report that identified those streets, then we're doing what Councillor Neal is talking about. We're asking staff to identify the streets for us. I'm sure they're going to reflect what Councillor Longo is talking about. In many ways, they'll be the identical streets. But the expertise, we don't want it to go out further and miss streets that could be part of it. But we have experts that we depend on here that I would like to identify the streets that really do fit the category that we're identifying here. So high density parking issues are on that street because of that high density and number of cars that are in these large rental units, and identify for us where those streets are so that we can say yay or nay, and then a process actually be established to go forward.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The original motion, as we passed a while back, had to do specifically with that one problem area, and as our Director of Engineering just mentioned, there was specifically one house that was very high density. I think we should address that problem, not expand it to have too broad of a brush and go beyond what we originally agreed to. So I think the pilot project should stick to, though it is a pilot project, what we learned from it could be expanded. In fact, many other parts of Thorold, other than Confederation Heights, might be in need of something like this. But rather than trying to guess what other areas might have a problem, we know what the original problem was. We asked for a report to address, and a pilot project to address that problem on those high-density streets. So I think the pilot projects should just stick to those high-density streets. And so I think rather than trying to list, as I asked previous, what streets to remove, I think we should just have a motion to do the pilot project on the names of the streets that our Director of Engineering just mentioned. He mentioned those high-density streets, which we originally had identified as a problem. I think instead of saying remove this, and this street, we should say proceed with the pilot project on and the names of the streets that our Director of Engineering just mentioned. So I'd like to put that forward.
Okay, first of all, we have an amendment that we haven't voted on. The amendment was put forward by Councillor Neal, and he wanted from table 2, he wanted to remove honey locust from that. And that's where we should be debating. To add more right now, I'm having difficulty figuring out how to go about this. But the original motion was to remove honey locust from that list, and the rest of the streets will remain the same on the pilot project. Councilor Pion.
Yes, in that case, I'd like to recommend to my fellow councilors that we go ahead and vote in favor of the amendment, that is to remove honey locust, and then proceed to limit to those 4 streets. I mean, removing honey locust is in keeping with what I said about just strictly sticking with the other streets that have a high density. So I'm fine with just going ahead. I would recommend we favor the removal of honey locust, and that is a step towards the next thing that I mentioned, which is to just limit it to those streets.
I'll allow afterwards more debate. We'll go back to the original
Right.
motion. And then if more streets, you feel more streets, you want more streets to be removed, by all means, we'll debate it. But right now, I want to call a question on removing honey locust from table number 2, street restriction specifications in that table. I'll call one more last time for speakers on that one motion by Councilor Neal. There isn't any, so I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, back to the original motion. This is where you can take or add to the list. How's that sound? Councilor Neal.
Yeah, let's amend table number 2 to the, is it 4 streets? 5 streets that we're talking about, and amend table 2 to have those specific 5 seats, or 5 streets.
Which 5 streets? There's more than, there's 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The
First 5.
The first 5 are the original, or what the original pilot was supposed to be about. So all we're doing is we're going back to the original pilot, and that's the first 5 streets.
Okay, so we're amending the report to just include the first 5 streets on table 2.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Councilor Whalen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask also that we leave Raspberry Trail on there. That's a nightmare, and the parking is just horrendous going in off the main street there. And it's a side street that takes you a shortcut to the back, so I'd like to ask the council to leave that one on there also, please.
Okay. Are there any oppositions to adding Raspberry Trail? Okay, so now we have 6 streets. Okay, we'll, that's another amendment to the report. So, okay, we're speaking, Councilor Neal put the amendment on the floor, and we're speaking to the amendment. Councilor Whalen wants that, amend the amendment by adding Raspberry Trail.
Can I speak to the amendment, please?
Yes, by all means.
Okay, I agree with what Councilor Neal just said. Stick to the original. It's a pilot project.
Yeah.
So we don't have to cover everything right now. We need to go ahead and get some sort of data, and the streets that we originally picked is more than enough to go ahead and start collecting data on this sort of thing. And then we can start adding. So I don't recommend we start amending with adding more streets after we just removed a bunch of streets. I think we should just go back to the original. This all started with those streets, and the motion was to do a pilot project on those streets. So I think we should just stick with that. 1 year will go by quickly, we'll have our data, and then we can start talking about what other streets might or might not be included. So I would recommend that that's what we do.
So you're saying,
I'm speaking in favor of the amendment that Councilor Neal just put forward,
okay.
and I guess, that's where I would stop.
Okay. Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the reason why I'm asking Raspberry Trail, anybody's been over there, the parking is horrendous coming off the main street there. The homework's already been done, so I'm just asking for the council to just go along with Wilmore Street, meaning we've already got it in place to add the amendment to the amendment. Thank you.
For the sake of avoiding confusion, Councilor Neal, you...
I'll include it in my amendment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's the amendment. Basically, those 6 roads will be...
And they are, please?
Yeah.
Can we name the 6 roads, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Dunsmore.
Fox Grape Road, White Ash Road, Juneberry Road, Shellbark Lane, Elderberry Road, and Raspberry Trail.
Okay. Councilor Pion.
So speaking to the amendment, I guess we just amended the amendment, but I agree that that road might have a problem, but I have driven around Thorold. There's roads near where I live that I can barely move my car through when cars are parked on both sides of the street, let alone a emergency vehicle. So I think we should just stick with the original ones that were, because we can start adding other problem roads. The one that was just added isn't the only other problem road that we have. There are many other problem areas. So I think we should stick with the original.
Councilor Longo.
I've lived in the area for 16 years. Raspberry Trail has always had no parking on one side. So this is nothing new. Raspberry Trail has limited parking for 16 years. Because they're encompassing all streets in the area. I agree, stick to the original proposal from a year ago. The streets that I named 10 minutes ago. The rest aren't part of the pilot. Raspberry Trail doesn't need to be.
No.
It's already no parking.
Okay.
Can I have clarification then, please? If Raspberry
Yeah,
Trail...
I'd like clarification.
Yeah, if Raspberry Trail already has parking on one side, are we proposing it has no parking on either side? That would be ridiculous. So can we remove Raspberry Trail, please, and just stick with the original? Otherwise, we're trying to tweak the results of what we're...
Councilor Neal.
I will
it?
remove Raspberry Trail from my amendment.
Okay. Councilor Hanley, did you want to speak? Okay. To the original report. Now that we have consensus here,
So I guess we need to vote on the amendment.
I'm going to call a question on Councilor Neal's amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
So just to be clear, that
Now-
amendment did not have Raspberry Trail in it, right?
What's that?
That amendment we just voted on did not have Raspberry Trail on it.
No.
Okay,
Did
great.
not have Raspberry Trail. So, Mr. Dunsmore,
Can I ask for just a little bit of clarification on that?
Yeah.
Raspberry Trail, if what Anthony was saying is true, that it had parking, do we want to put the no parking back up? I would like to go back to the original bylaw that was there previously. Is that what everybody's hoping for?
the Raspberry Trail is out of the equation.
Okay, but the way it was.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Counselor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dunsmore, you're saying that we're taking the signs down now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to, whatever that original bylaw was, that's what we're going to go back to.
So we're going to take signs down, that's what I was getting at, so we're going to be more of a
No,
nuisance.
no, if the original bylaw before we made any of these modifications was no parking on one side,
Perfect,
we will reinstate that no parking.
sounds good.
Okay, everybody clear on the motion? I'll call a question. All those in favor?
You're done.
I'm done, yeah, we're done. Okay. Counselor Neal. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The process. I don't see the process in here. It says a year long, but what's the process? Are we going to have a public meeting halfway through? Are we going to have an initial report in 6 months, 8 months' time? Are we going to wait till the end, and then all of a sudden we have the public meeting? What at the end, what happens?
Through you, Mr.
Dunsmore.
Mayor, while we're going through this pilot process, we're also going to be doing our transportation master plan. That transportation master plan is going to have a lot of public meeting and public input in the process, and so it'll be discussed as part of that. But then, as we move towards the end, we will come back to council for some direction as to how we want to move forward with the pilot program or making it permanent.
Okay, you're satisfied? Okay. We'll move on. We're back to consent. Okay, I need a motion to move all the reports in the consent portion of our agenda. Councillor Ugolini. Are there any items to be pulled? Any reports to be pulled to discuss? I have one I want to pull. It's PWC 2018-29. It's the
Crack ceiling.
right there. It's a crack ceiling on various streets in contract, number 2018-195. This is finally, after 8 years, this is a partnership between Welland and Thorold, and the savings to Thorold on this contract was about 15%. So this is where, you know, we've with shared services, we finally done something with one community, and we were able to save 15%. So I'm expecting this to snowball somewhere along the line. We have Pelham that wants to join in, and who else?
There are other municipalities.
I think it was Lincoln and Pelham are looking to meet with us on this program. So I expect this to snowball for the next council. I hope you'll stick with it, work with it. 15% is a pretty good savings. Okay, that's all I have to say on that. I'll call a question on all the consent reports. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to ratify recommendations. Okay, motion to ratify recommendations from General Committee, and I'll call on Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Neal, that council adopt those items approved by the General Committee on August 7th, 2018.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Bylaws, first reading. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Longo, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaw. Bylaw 90, 2018, being a bylaw to exempt certain lands from Part Lot Control PLC 14, 2018.
Just call the numbers, Councillor.
Just the numbers? Okay, that makes it easy then. Bylaw number 2018, bylaw 91, 2018, bylaw 92, 2018, bylaw 93, 2018, bylaw 94, 2018. And that the same now be read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
The bylaw that was just read a first time be read a second and third time, and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council, not in the contrary, notwithstanding.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Council committees and board meeting minutes to review for information purposes. Counselor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Counselor Neal, that the council receive and file minutes of the Committee of Councils and Local Boards as presented.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adjournment, Counselor Neal. Yes.
Okay, moved by myself, second by Councilor Whalen, that this meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:46
And a half.
and a half.
All those in favor?
Thanks.
Opposed? That's carried.
There we go. Here's